Bobby, question for you. This was from Marcelo. He wanted to know how to increase cadence, I believe, not just how to increase pace and get faster, but if there's a recommended cadence, or if someone is running with a cadence that slows down and trying to maintain stride length as they fatigue, what are some specific strategies to use to get the cadence up into an optimal level, and how will you know when it's an optimal level?
Yeah, I think the thing to remember again is the whole concept of the kinetic chain. So one of the quickest ways to improve your cadence is to simply bend your elbows more if you tend to run with an open elbow angle. And the second one that I use quite a bit is to just increase the balance of the torso to the pelvis. In other words, that forward lean, not arching the low back, but dropping the front of the chest down by releasing the back a little bit more. So obviously it requires some strengthening and some postural work. But the primary one is the hard one for the majority of the running community because they are heel strikers, and that is accelerating your foot to the ground. In other words, trying to move your stride length more under and away than forward and under. So instead of reaching, pushing downwards and then stiffening the leg. That is the primary activity that drives cadence.
Yeah, that's great. And that's, I think, one thing that I came away with the last time I met with you in the fall in Boulder was after I went home and practiced what we had talked about, that sensation that I was actually accelerating every time my foot hit the ground, which was a new experience for me. I was no longer pulling myself forward with my hamstrings, even though I had gotten away from heel striding. I had a sensation that once my foot struck the ground, I was already accelerating forward, and it was almost like an effortless floating forward. That was a pretty new sensation for me.
Oh, fantastic! Well, those are the three major areas. Then is getting the whole body working intact. The upper body is so much more neurally rich than the lower body is, and so bending the elbows creates a shorter arc, increases that stride length. Just again, be careful of lifting up the shoulders, getting that dynamic balance going where the shoulders are slightly ahead of the hips. And then just accelerating the foot to the ground, not floating into the ground and then having to post up, but accelerating into the ground so that the foot is reacting to the imbalance as opposed to you actively trying to move yourself forward.
Okay, I really like that idea, and I want to bring that to Terry because there's a comparison with swimming recovery that I want to draw so that people can start to see the connections that I'm seeing. Could you rephrase that one more time about not reacting to the balance? Describe that again.
So what the dynamic balance, which is basically an imbalance, creates is a safety mechanism. There's two reflex actions in running. One's called an extensor cross reflex, which makes sure that your left foot follows your right foot and not left foot, or right foot. And then the other one is a stretch reflex in your hip flexors that makes your leg come forward. And so if you are in that slightly imbalanced position, you are taking a step downward, all right, as opposed to forward to stop yourself from stumbling or to stop yourself from falling. So your body is reacting to your posture as opposed to you being upright and balanced, and you're now acting, which is a much more uneconomical motion.
I understand. That makes complete sense to me. Terry, can you talk a little bit about how you view the recovery arm in swimming? So both of these actions are, Bobby, in your case, one foot's on the ground bearing weight while the other one is drawing through, and then that foot that's drawing through has to do something. You're saying that it's reacting to the imbalance because you are leaning forward. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, exactly. It's a protective mechanism almost,
Okay.
and then it just becomes a repetitive motion.
Okay, so Terry, I'm seeing a parallel between this, or an interesting comparison between how you teach the recovery in swimming and the imbalance that's created by having that arm out of the water. You want to talk about that for a minute?
When I listened to Bobby, I knew where you would be going with this, and it's a great connection. So yeah, I guess it's a little bit different in that we view the recovery not as an artifact of instability, but as a primary cause of instability. And the reason for the recovery being a primary cause of instability in the torso is the fact that when your arm comes out of the water, it weighs 10 times what it did in the water, meaning even small movements in the wrong direction have the potential to create considerable errors in movement and primarily destabilization of the torso. And what happens when you have that instability in the torso is that your arms and legs become compromised in their ability to create propulsion because they're too busy correcting the instability. So it's very similar, but it's kind of the chicken and egg situation. But yeah, you have to really take great care about how you bring your hand from the exit to the entry in swimming, and usually people overlook that. They think the only thing that matters is the pushing back water part because that's where propulsion happens, and then they tend to overlook the recovery. But we think it's extremely important to get that right.
In sprinting, it's an absolute primary marker of performance is the ability to reset the leg. It's what defines average runners and excellent runners is the speed at which they can reset their leg. So, any misalignment there, any laxity in the hips created by anterior rotation, all of those things are critical. So it's a primary factor in running for sure.
And in sprinting and swimming, your ability to set your hand effectively very quickly, at very high stroke rates, to set your hand effectively, not disturb the water, but keep the water quiet while you use it for purchase. So it sounds like there's another real similarity there.
This is great.